Welcome to Beyond Film School, where I teach you all about the film industry. I'm Amber, and in this video, we are talking about everything streaming and distribution. I had the lovely honor of being able to interview Eric Lapointe from Global Vid Academy. He is so knowledgeable about the world of streaming, about distribution. He sold thousands of hours of content in regions around the world. I feel so lucky and very, very grateful to be able to bring Eric to Beyond Film School, bring him to my channel, bring him to you to tap into his knowledge, his experience, and his lovely career that he's had in distribution. And from this video, you can take away what you need and how to pitch your content, how to get those contacts and book those meetings, and also how to keep growing when it comes to distributing your films. All right, let's meet Eric. I want to welcome you. I'm very, very happy to interview Eric Lapointe. He has a ton of experience in distribution, and I'm very, very happy to have you talk to Beyond Film School because I talk a lot about production and behind the scenes, and I feel like there are so many people out there who just want to learn about how to get on streaming services, what do we do for distribution, and I feel like this is like the perfect collaboration. So I just want to intro you, tell us about you and how you got started in distribution.
So how I got started in distribution, that is, how many hours do we have, Amber? Actually, for me, it didn't start in TV and film. It actually started in the music industry. And back when I was younger, I wanted to be in the entertainment industry. I didn't necessarily want to be in TV and film, but what was in my basement was a drum set. And I had friends over and we made lots of noise, horrible noise. We put my parents through much torture during my teenage years. I was an okay musician, and I started noticing these independent record labels that were putting together catalogs. And sometimes they were printed on black and white paper. This is like in the late 90s or mid 90s. And they were, printing catalogs with maybe 3 releases. And that to me was like, oh, wow, I want to start a record label. Unbeknownst to me, starting a record label is actually starting a distribution business. I have to get CDs in stores. And how do you do that? And of course, if you live in your own city, like at the time I used to live in Montreal, and we would go in one by one and put CDs and consignments at stores, but that only gets you so far. And then you need distribution. You need cross-Canadian distribution and then American distribution. And you need to find the people who are willing to work with independent producers. In this case, we were the producers of CDs. We needed a list of stores across Canada. That was like the starting point. And I remember one by one, because I had got them faxed in from a distributor who was kind enough to share their entire database. And one by one, we would literally cold call because we didn't have emails necessarily with all these companies. So we literally had to cold call one by one. And that was basically by accident my intro into the distribution industry. 5 years of running my independent record label and then realizing, this isn't working out. I got to get a real job and fall back on my university degree and then work in supply chain, super boring. And then I saw a job posting at Cirque du Soleil, and they were looking for somebody to run their music distribution department. It was just the right timing. There was one of the ladies who was working in the TV and DVD department, basically at Cirque du Soleil. Like, we would film our own shows and then sell that to broadcasters. We would film our own documentaries, kind of like behind the scenes, and then sell that to broadcasters. She was on mat leave. Her backup, there was one person who was responsible for selling all of Cirque du Soleil TV specials and documentaries around the world. At one point, she just decided that she was going to move on and go somewhere else. And my boss at the time, thank God for him, because he turned to me and said, "You're a content guy, right, Eric?" And I'm like, "Yeah. So do you want to actually explore TV distribution
Do this.
for a little while. Like, I don't think he thought it was going to be long term. I thought it was going to be long term. We have something called the Gemini Awards here in Canada, but on the French side, it's called Les Gémeaux, which is basically the translation of Gemini. And I went to this event. It seemed super posh. I felt out of place, and I thought, oh, this TV business is not going to be for me. Little did I know. But that was my first foray into it. And as I got into it, I just really love the business. And the idea that you can take content and sell it in England and in France and in Serbia and in Japan, like basically in over 100 countries around the world, that was fascinating to me. And then as I moved on in my career, the next advancement I made was working for Just for Laughs. And that was amazing because now because with Cirque du Soleil, I was working with other distributors that were helping us do what we needed to do. At Just for Laughs, they had their own small internal distribution team. So we had a separate web department. It was kind of convoluted, but at some point that person left. It's kind of a story of my life here. Somebody leaves and they go, well,
and save the day.
Replace? So I ran the YouTube department. That was an important milestone for me from a digital distribution standpoint. And that's where I realized, well, once again, we need to move towards the SVODs and the AVODs. We need to basically form partnerships with the likes of Tubi, with the likes of Zumo, with the likes of Pluto TV. Actually, that was another department that was already doing that, but it was all part of the ecosystem. I wanted the company to go towards that, and Amazon too. But all these new avenues were opening up, and because we had a sizable content, we could deal sizable catalog, we could deal directly with them, which is different when you're an independent producer and you have one documentary. They don't necessarily want to talk to the one person who comes to them with one contract.
Right.
One piece, like they want one contract for 100 hours of content if you're going to work with people.
So many things that have come up, like you have NBC Peacock, you have like Paramount Plus, you have Disney Plus. Gosh, because Tubi, I feel like I just discovered Tubi like just last year.
Yeah.
Hulu, Amazon, Apple TV, which I feel like that's fairly new. I know Apple used to have like their section. I know they were like building up to having all their original content, but then like they're also like, I feel like almost every TV station, like every network now has their own like streaming service, and I think it's just like there's too much. There's like almost too much. And it's kind of funny how that distribution and the streaming services has like 100% fully correlated to how much we have to shoot. Because in production, there's so many shows. There's so many things shooting in New York and LA and Atlanta and like everywhere in the States and everywhere in Canada. Like the film hubs are like blowing up. There's like too much now for like cities to sustain. It's kind of crazy. So I know I'm talking about production and content stuff, but it makes me wonder about, is it getting more competitive or is it easier to get on these streaming services, do you think?
Well, it's certainly offered up more opportunities. And remember in the beginning, I said, oh, there's a change happening in the traditional broadcast world. And so I think these new streaming opportunities are coming in at the right time, and they're kind of replacing other projects that normally would get. I mean, it's kind of ironic because the reality is if the broadcasters aren't doing so well, it's because the streamers are doing better. Right. So because the broadcasters might have less money, all of a sudden Netflix is coming into regions around the world, by the way, not just in the United States, but they've opened up already an office in Toronto, and they've already committed to spending over $500 million into Canadian content. Now, is that stuff that was already pre-planned and they were going to shoot a lot in Canada anyways for tax credit purposes? I really don't know, but either way, they made a commitment. And as we're seeing now with all the great content coming out of players like Netflix, they want worldwide stories. They're creating originals that come from Brazil, that come
Right.
from Korea, as we saw the big one last year. And they're setting up shops in, they have an office, I believe it's in Paris. And they just announced recently they're opening up one in Warsaw because they want to find those stories from Eastern Europe. And producers are getting better and better and more sophisticated around the world. And so there's a lot of creativity that's coming from that. And clearly, what we've seen is that sophisticated audiences around the world don't mind if the story comes from a different country, and don't
Right.
mind actually reading subtitles or overdub or hearing overdubs.
Right. Right.
You know,
So how would one get on these streaming services?
wow, that
Yeah.
is a big question. So let's separate AVOD and SVOD
Right.
just to make things super clear, because SVOD is actually very similar to your traditional television industry.
Hmm.
When I pitch to a broadcaster or an SVOD player like Netflix, I have to uh, either meet them at a market, like an actual, like, a content market, a TV market, or on the film side, you would call it a film festival. And I would have to meet them and show them my catalog. And you have to meet the people who are the acquisitions managers if it's existing content.
Hmm.
And so there's no difference between those two because they're buying. And
Right.
because they're buying, you have to talk to them, present your show, give them a screening link, and basically and a one sheet that looks really sharp, and all the points that of why they should buy it. And then you hope for the best and that you've done your job, and you basically waiting for an answer.
I'm like, hope for
AVOD
the
is
best.
different.
So I do have a
Well,
question. I just sorry.
yeah, no, go
What's
ahead.
a one sheet? Explain what a one sheet is.
One sheet is you as a salesperson, either a producer or a distributor, that has all the information on one sheet of paper. And
Gotcha.
that is going to tell me the title, the tagline. That alone should start telling me what this is about. But then I would also have like a column on the side that would lay out point by point, like an almost point form, what kind of genre this is, so that there's no guessing on the point of the buyer who's in front of you to go, is this a documentary or is
Right.
this scripted? Because if you're launching straight into your pitch, you might not realize you've just skipped some really important information. Like, what is this show? Oh,
Right.
it's a documentary. Oh, okay, so it's not fiction. No, no, sorry, it's factual. So you're laying that out: format, documentary, reality TV show, scripted content. Um, Also, how many episodes you have? Is this a one movie that's 90 minutes long, or is this a series that's had like 4 different seasons?
Hmm.
That So again, I have an idea right away. Oh wow, you have 4 seasons of this times 13 episodes. That's a lot of content. That's a lot of
Right.
volume that then becomes super interesting to the buyers. So you're basically listing all that out. And then of course, if somebody, high profile director did it, and if it's a film, you want to share, all the different film festivals that you've been part of. It potentially won awards. It got some laurels and got shown around the world. This is something that's already been vetted by other people, and all this information is there. And of course, the last most important piece, and again, there's a flip side to this, there's more details you can put on it, but is your synopsis. What is it, this movie or TV series, in, let's say, 2 paragraphs? You don't have to get too lengthy,
Hmm.
because in these market meetings you've got like 20 minutes maybe to make your case. Like,
Right.
they're recorded, they're timed in half-hour slots, but people show up late or have to leave early.
Hmm.
And so really you've got about 20 minutes to talk with these people. So SVOD, you need a distributor.
Right.
Like, no question about it. It would be really hard as an independent producer who's never like to send a cold email to Netflix, I don't think they even often say, oh, we don't take unsolicited
Right.
submissions, right? So you need somebody in the middle that vetted it for you. AVOD is a different game. This is giving power to producers, just like the iTunes of this world gave power to music producers. You see how the two industries do actually link.
Right, right.
You can actually start to work on revenue share opportunities. The best example was Amazon Prime, which, talk about how fast things change. It's already closed. I'm really sorry to say this for a lot of your
Right.
viewers out there, but it was in February of 2021. They decided, you know what? We're cutting off access to unsolicited documentaries and factual content. Why? I heard that it is linked to COVID and the pandemic and all the mass amount of misinformation that was going out there. I don't want to
Right.
get anybody angry here about
Yeah.
saying that, but that's just what happened, right? And so they realized that, well, we're not fact checking these documentaries, we're just allowing people to upload it, and as long as it passes the QC
Right.
check, quality
And
control.
yeah, I was going to say quality control. Yeah.
Yeah. And your file is okay, and you've given all the metadata and all the information necessary to deliver that content, they accept it. Well, what if somebody's saying, you know what? I don't know. I don't have an example for you.
Right. Just horrible
this horrible
misinformation.
thing, it'll be good.
Right.
Like, no, actually, no. Don't do that horrible thing. So they had to be a little bit stricter there. Now that's their excuse, but also they might be shifting, because even a few years before that, or a few months before that, they already started lowering the amount of revenue share they were actually paying out to
Right.
the producers. So that already was starting to hurt the producers, and then they cut it off completely. And I think that's a shame, because Amazon Prime was one of those few platforms, almost like YouTube, where you could upload long form content, and it would give your productions, your web series, and all those hard to sell content an immediate audience. And if you promoted it, well, then you could actually get people to watch
Right.
it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But also, you have to look at it from Amazon's standpoint. It's probably quite expensive to store all this content, right?
Of course.
And so after a while, if things are only getting 5 views per month, that's probably not worth keeping you. So they probably had a threshold. Then what I noticed what happened is that they did the same thing for scripted, kind of, in November of 2021. And so with scripted content now, it can't go immediately onto the SVOD, Amazon Prime, but you could still sell it for transactional. So it's kind of a halfway point for scripted, because I think they are still favoring scripted, and maybe there's less misinformation because it's fictional anyways.
Right.
Right. So for that, basically they just said, it's only to buy or to rent.
So the one thing you said about, in order to kind of get onto these streaming services, was that you have to have a middleman. You have to have someone that's going to be the person to kind of bring it to Netflix or Amazon or Apple TV or whatever. So I guess the big question that everyone's going to have is like, how do you even get these contacts that you need in order to, get that distributor or get it on those platforms?
Well, first of all, you have to go to events, as you've said to me in a different call, in a different conversation. You have to go to events, and in my case, I highly recommend going to actual full-on television markets if you're on the TV side. And if you're on the film side, it's obviously your film festivals, right? And that's the only way that you're going to start building out. And it might seem really daunting and expensive in the first time, but you're not doing your career any justice if you don't go there in the first place. Because how are you going to meet distributors? How are you going to meet the broadcasters or the the buyers or whoever you need to meet. How are you going to meet them if you don't go to these events?
Right.
And believe me, they're really expensive, and you have to prepare way in advance to make it worth your while.
Like,
So the
what's
first thing
way
is
in advance?
like 2 months.
2 months in advance.
Do not go to an event. I've seen the newbies do this, and it breaks my heart every single time. And probably it's partly part of the reason why I do this podcast, or my podcast, and is that basically I've seen people show up to major events like MIPCOM in Cannes in France, which is the TV side of it's the biggest TV market in the world. Very similar to how big the Cannes Film Festival is, but a completely different event run by different people, and that happens in May. Or TIFF in Toronto, it's a really popular one, or Sundance, right? All these major events you go to. So that I still remember, and you can spot them. It's usually on the last day, because I stick around till the end no matter what. And on the last day, you always see a few people just going booth to booth. And at this stage, most people have already left Cannes. They're at the airport.
Right.
They're ready to go back to England or go back to the States. And the last day is like, it's always the dead day at the markets, but I usually schedule a few meetings.
Right.
And that's when you get these random people walking by, and they're pitching an idea or a show they have produced, but they showed up without any preparation, any pre-booked meetings. I think not even strategizing about like, what do I want to achieve at this event?
Right.
And that's heartbreaking, because then, you could do two things. You can send them away and make them feel bad. Or what I do, because it's my personality, is I'll coach them a little bit and go,
what's what you do next time?
Next time. But that's heartbreaking, because the person spent at least $5,000 US to go to Cannes.
Right. So it for me, people are like, well, we're in the digital age. I still have to go to these film events and meet people person to person. And I feel like it has to be said for anyone who's watching this, who's trying to get their content out there. It's like, no company, and I'm pretty sure this is across the board, is going to like take your movie or your content and they're going to watch it online and they're going to get a random email from you and you can just submit that way. It's like the unsolicited material is a very serious thing overall. And I think you probably agree with this. It's like, you can't just, info at such and such distributor.com or whatever company and just like submit your info and just hope for the best that way. Right.
Yeah. You also have to understand the flip side of things, because I do work with a producer here in Vancouver, and it's a legal matter. Like, receiving unsolicited submissions is a potential lawsuit in the making, and there are sharks out there that are fishing for that. Right. And I'll give you two examples. The first example is at Cirque du Soleil. They would get all sorts of ideas being proposed to them, and then months later get sued because the company happened to be doing something similar.
Right.
That's phishing. And so what would the legal department do if they knew where the letters were coming from? It's like, oh, it's another letter from so and so. They're fishing for something, or like anything that seems fishy and unsolicited. What they would do is have a policy not to open up the envelope.
Right.
And then the legal department would put that in storage.
Yeah. Like, to prove that they didn't look at this was totally not even right.
Yeah. So if it would happen, they could actually, now this is before the internet age, right? But that's the one thing. And the reality too is, with all these new platforms, is they're doing the same thing, but it's going to spam.
Right.
So if you've never emailed that person, you are going to spam. And they have assistants that will go through the spam and decide what passes through or not. And if it seems too much like an unsolicited email, they're just not going to bring it out of its spam life.
Right. Right.
right? So that's number one. And then even with a smaller producer like we're at, we have to be just like that Cirque du Soleil example. We have to be careful. It's like, well, what if somebody submits something to us that's so similar to something else we're developing? And then they go, whoa, hey, I emailed you that idea. So
Right.
the first thing I do when people contact me, because in my case it's different, it's for development and they're creators and they're trying to get into the kids animation space. And when they email us, it's like, well, first of all, just give me your log line. And I'll tell you right away if we already have too much of that content. That way, it's like we don't even have to get into your one sheet or your Bible, which has even more information. You basically, so you have to understand the other side of the coin first. But the most important part is going to those events and meeting those people face to face. And the other tip here, this is an important one, is that if you register with these events, most of them have some kind of, it's either a B2B system, which is the worst because nobody really uses them. I'm just going to be perfectly frank. Like they'll have a B2B system where you can dialogue with the other delegates because they're not giving out, let's say some of them are not giving out their email addresses.
Right.
So that's frustrating. How are you supposed to set up meetings if you don't have their emails and you don't even know who's attending? So they offer a B2B system. What others have done through time, and this is the best way, is you pay for your major MIPCOM pass, and then you can get to download an Excel file of all the delegates. And that includes the emails if the people have opted in to provide their emails. And most do, because most do want to get contacted. They're going there for the same reason you're going there.
Right.
They're going there to find content. You're going there to sell content. Get a hold of that email list. Or if they don't have an email list, contact customer service. Ask for a delegate list. At least you can see who's attending and you can try to figure out their emails. The best advice, and if this seems daunting to people who are starting out, is number one, build your own Excel sheet, right? Like let's imagine you haven't even gone to a festival yet. You've got zero contacts. You and I both know this, how this works because we both started our careers from scratch. Line number one, I want to talk to the person at Netflix. So Netflix, I found their name. I have their name. Now I have to figure out what their email is. And you build yourself a customer list. In fancy sales terms, we call that a CRM, a customer relationship management system. But you don't need a fancy system to do it. You just need Excel. Just like how I had a list of stores across Canada when I was doing those cold calls in the beginning. Then I learned their emails. I got their emails, and then I was able to start emailing them and build a relationship with them. But that's number one, is build yourself a list. Find out who that person is. And then then you fast track that by going to a festival event, because you can most likely get a delegate list at the very least.
That right there, I feel like it's so useful because some people are like, they go into it so blind and not knowing what really to do at all. So that was like amazingly useful. Now, what about when people are like, I don't really want to do film festivals. I don't want to really look for a distributor. What about the DIY, doing it yourself, kind of like distribution?
Well, if you don't want to be playing in this game, I think you're in the wrong industry.
Oh my God. Got him. Got him. But I mean, that's true. That's so true.
I mean, DIY can only take you so much. And believe me, like when I was in when I was in college radio and starting up a record label, I had this stupid snobby attitude of like, if it's not indie, it's crap, and that kind of attitude. And you can't have that. That was me in my 20s. But as you grow, you realize, you need to build a network. You need to focus on that, and you can't do everything on your own. It's just the same thing as being on set. Like you need a whole team of people to support you. You're not going to, be the director and the lighting guy and the sound guy and the grip guy. It's like,
you would hope.
If you're feeling introverted and you're feeling like, oh, I don't like networking, I don't like going to these events, I think you just got to get outside of your comfort zone a little bit, and eventually you'll like it. And I'm a product of that. I didn't like networking when I was younger. I hated it.
Right.
Like, it seems so phony and everything. But it wasn't until I really got into the TV business and it became my passion, like my really true passion. Um, then it's like, well, no, this is fun to do. Like, I want to network. I want to build relationships with people. But so focus on the relationship and building genuine contacts rather than feeling like some kind of networking sleazeball.
Right. Right.
Like,
Right.
eliminate that. That's negative, right?
Right.
That's a younger person going, well, I'm better than that. Like,
Right.
no, you're not. You're just not comfortable yet, and that's okay, and it takes time. So I would still go to the events, but it might be hard in the beginning, right?
Right.
So, like, when we talked about like doing things yourself, you can do that to a certain extent, but then you're going to run into issues because you're not going to get any marketing support. You're not going to get any visibility support. Just like anybody, uh, prior to the changes that I just mentioned about Amazon in 2021, in 2020, anybody could upload to Amazon. That's great. But guess what? The people getting priority on Amazon were people who were going through agents. So Amazon already knew they had business relationships versus this random person from Wichita
Right.
uploading um, a 15-minute short film that they did in film class. Like, anybody can do that, but it
Yes.
doesn't mean anybody, and maybe your friends will be convinced to watch it, but it's not going to grow beyond that. You do need to have somebody like, okay, this is coming from this distributor. We have a special relationship with them, so we're going to give it more visibility. We're going to, so basically, already the Amazon algorithms, and because this isn't just Amazon uses a lot of algorithms, just
Right.
like YouTube, but the Amazon algorithms already knew that, oh, this was uploaded by somebody random versus this was uploaded by a preferred partner. So the algorithms would already treat things differently
Mm-hmm.
from the outset. It's not necessarily going to give you any visibility just because you uploaded it. Now, that
Right.
was before they changed the rules.
Yeah.
Now you still need aggregators, sadly.
Yeah. So
There's no other
aggregators.
platform like Amazon.
Right. Right. Aggregators are the middlemen we're talking about, because I know that sometimes that people are like, "What the hell is an aggregator?"
It's another form of distributor. Like, you
Right.
can call it this. The difference is that the aggregator doesn't care about, not that they don't care. It's just that their business model isn't made to treat you and focus on your content per se, unless they see that, oh, this is about to hit it out of the park. Then they might give you some extra legwork because it's a win-win scenario. A distributor will take you on and help you market it, help you sell it, help you position it in that one sheet, as I mentioned to you before. Aggregators just going to take what you already built on your own and going to give you an opportunity to upload the content. They're going to give you like a set guideline of what they need. And you're out of luck. If you don't have these things, you're going to be out of luck. Like, you need closed
Right.
caption files. You don't
Yep.
have closed caption files, you're not going to get on these American AVOD players. You need really high quality marketing photos. You need a whole metadata sheet, which is another Excel file to
Right.
build. And so the responsibility of building all that and in order to deliver is on you, and you're getting no support from the distributor. So sure, there's platforms that I've looked into recently. Like, there's one called Film Hub that looks really great. Has a dashboard and information, and anybody can deliver their content to them, more or less. I mean, there must be some thresholds, but
Right.
basically, you deliver to them, and they automate the whole process, and then they go and basically pitch your content electronically through Tubi and Zumo and all these other platforms that we talked about. And then they will say yes or no if they want that content. So again, that's great. But then who's going to market your film? Who's going to promote it? Who's
because it
going
can
to
be on the platform, but if no one knows to watch it, no one knows it's there. It's kind of just sitting there collecting
exactly, yeah.
dust and not being watched.
So as a distributor, that becomes my job. It's like, okay,
Right.
I have partnerships that can get you onto these platforms. And that's one thing, that's delivering. But then once your content is on this platform, then what?
Say you have all your ducks in a row, right? You talked about like getting someone to get in contact with. You're at the film festivals events. You're set. You've got your meetings. You have all the emails. You had your meetings.
Yeah.
What are some things to keep in mind once you have that meeting?
Let me backtrack 1 second there, because I think we missed maybe one important point to get the meeting in the first place.
Right.
It's going to be an email, like, because I just talked about how you can get an email.
Right.
Your email should be short and sweet. Don't go into details about what your movie is. Like, keep a little bit of excitement happening by leaving room for curiosity. And so in your first email, you should not talk about yourself. Of course, you have to introduce yourself real quickly, but you need to tell that person why you're emailing them. Why is this person from Netflix or from PBS or whoever you're emailing, why are they getting an email from you? Why did you choose that person? So right away, they know you did your research. Then the next thing is in the second paragraph, you talk about your show, but very brief. You're not giving a synopsis. You're not going into the camera angles or anything fancy. You're just basically saying, I have a project and I'd like to meet you. And then you give them some time options. In the Blue Lounge, I would like to meet you at these following times when I'm available. And that way, that person gets the email and go, okay, I see why you got the email. I see that this is well targeted. There's something interesting about this idea. And yeah, I'm available on Tuesday at 10 a.m. I'll take that slot. And then you're done. So you just basically, instead of going back and forth, going, well, what time is good for you? Well, what time is good? It's like,
right.
No. You score the meeting. So be really precise, short and sweet in those emails. Basically make it super easy for them to just go, okay, great, I'll choose this. So now you're in the room, you're in a meeting with them. Now you've got a half an hour. Number one is that you've got 20 minutes, maybe at the most, in this half an hour slot. Because if they're busy at these events, they're showing up late and they're leaving slightly early because they got to go to the next meeting. So in that 20 minutes, and let's say you get a little bit more than that, but let's say you get 20 minutes, I would then focus on, number one, asking questions before you start launched into your pitch. Like, what is this person really buying? I've done my research, but now I don't want to assume that my research was right. It's like, hey, Amber, I've got this great horror movie to pitch, and then I start pitching my horror movie.
Right.
And then
but I'm not a horror movie distributor. I'm like,
but you're not a horror, but you hate
or
horror
something.
movies.
Right.
And it's like, well, I just wasted your time. And if you ask those questions at the beginning, like, well, what do you do, Amber? What do you distribute? What are you buying if you're a broadcaster? And they tell you, oh, we really hate horror movies. And you go, okay, well, forget that project. I'm going to take the other project that I have in my other pocket, and I'm going to pitch you a sci-fi project, right? And it's like, and hopefully you're going to these events with more than one idea and more than one project, right? And then that gives you room right away to shape your pitch while you're there, because it's like, oh, wow, this person hates reality TV shows. Well, forget that aspect of my catalog. I'm not going to pitch them that. I'm going to pitch them scripted content like they want. And so that allows you to then go into your pitch and go, well, these are the titles I have, or this is the idea I have, whatever it may be. Or maybe you only have one film. You're just starting out and you only have one film. I'm like, okay, I'm glad to hear you actually like horror movies, because guess what?
That's what I got.
That's what I got. And that was the research that said to me that you were the horror person. That's sounded
So you want to make sure you're pitching the correct things to the correct people.
Right. Then you leave room at the end for further discussion. So imagine you got to basically do your pitch within 10 minutes.
Right.
And then you leave room for conversation, for basically asking the right questions at the beginning. So you know if you have to pivot your pitch, and then leaving room after, because maybe they're going to have feedback for you. Maybe they want to buy from you, and maybe they're in a rush. So you need to make sure you leave them some room so they don't feel rushed. And the best thing to do and to think about is like, you can't you book yourself as many meetings as possible as these markets. So don't think every single one is going to work out. No, most of the time it won't. You're not going to be the piece of the puzzle that those people are looking for. So it's a numbers game. But when they're telling you, let's say they tell you right off, like, oh no, we don't want to have horror movies and we don't want this, and so that wouldn't work for a channel. This is an opportunity for you to build a relationship now with them. Well, what do you like? What are you acquiring? Like, what, like you, so now you go even deeper into that feedback, and you show yourself to be highly professional and courteous, and you walk away with building a relationship potentially, and you can meet them again and again and again in future markets. Right.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't believe the amount of young producers that go into these meetings for the first time, get rejected, heartbreaks, and they walk away. That's rude.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, no, this person is person X. You should really try to build a relationship with them. It's really all about that. And then after a while, that your Excel list that I was mentioning before gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And some of these people are really happy to meet you again.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like, at least when I worked in distribution, you know about other distributors. So sometimes if they do like your content and maybe they are not looking for horror, they know the other distributor that's like, you know what, so-and-so, my friend of mine, is actually looking for something exactly like this. I don't know if that's highly unlikely, but I feel like that definitely does happen.
100% happens. I think, it's a weird place to be. Now, I've never considered myself a salesperson, but here I am. That's what I do for a living. And I do consulting. But what happens at these markets is when you go to the dinners at nighttime, you're not having, unless you're having a client dinner with a buyer, and then it's a little bit more formal and whatnot. But what's happening most of the time is that we go to networking events and we befriend other salespeople from around the world, and even sometimes you're even competing,
right?
And but you've become friends. And guess what? So your dinners that you're organizing, they're not with clients necessarily; they're with other salespeople because you've made friends in the industry, and that can be really useful because as the distributor, when you're trying to sell stuff and you're looking for a tip on selling to a specific buyer in a specific territory, those friendships can come in handy because, at the end of the day, like most of them are going to be more collaborative actually, where I would say, I would get submitted content for my distribution company and I was like, this is not really a good fit, but you should really talk to this company. And it's happened on the flip side where people are looked at, I was talking about Cirque du Soleil before. There was a circus type of content that was pitched to a friend of mine here in Vancouver. And he was like, I really don't know, this is not what I do. And so do you want to have a look at it? And so basically I said yes. And he did the introduction that, we will absolutely introduce other people to and give tips. It really, it depends. Like you and I are kind of have that kind of vibe where like we like giving feedback to people.
Right.
Maybe somebody else will just say, no, this is not the right place for you, and turn you away.
Right.
That happens.
Right.
Don't get deterred by that those people are jerks.
Yeah, you just gotta keep going. Don't give up. You just gotta keep going.
Oh God, you're gonna have so many naysayers in your career, right? Like
right,
you
of
have
course.
to keep going.
You gotta be friends with rejection and failure for sure. So I just wanna kind of wrap this up with kind of some mistakes or things you've learned, some things to avoid, you know, like in this whole process, something that you're like, you know what, I wish I knew.
I don't know, because it's hard for me to answer, because at the end of the day, I've very much been a do-it-yourself type of person.
Mhm.
So every little bit that I was learning, I was getting encouraged by. And I don't think that and every new contact you make, every new thing you learn, even today, I'm in my 40s now, and I'm continually learning and staying curious. So I guess that would be the one thing, is like, never lose your curiosity, no matter what age you are. Like, if you're starting out, be curious. This is like your time to be curious. But also, if you're in your 60s and you're still in the business, well, be curious, like, and keep yourself young and up to date with where things at. And then the other thing is, don't leave things up to chance. Like, you don't go to an event and go, oh, okay, I'm just going to walk around and I'm going to go to panels, and you're going to have time to do that anyways. You're not going to score, like, you're not going to go to TIFF or any other event for the first time in your career and just have a back-to-back meetings. I mean, maybe if you're a real go-getter,
Right.
but you're going to have space for panels. You're going to have space to network. You're going to have space to walk around, but just work way in advance, 2 months in advance, trying to get those meetings, and basically setting yourself up for success, because you can't rely your entire career on serendipity. Serendipity is cool. Networking is cool, but I can't really think of any one networking event that got me $100,000 deal.
Thank you so much. I feel like you gave us so much good stuff that a lot of people don't keep in mind.
I hope I did.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of good stuff that people got to keep in mind. And I feel like also a lot of the stuff that you're saying, kind of people aren't thinking about now, because I mean, going to film festivals and having that in-person meeting, people are like, oh, that was what they used to do. I'm like, no, it still happens. It still very much happens. And it's still very, very relevant today. Because that's what we used to do when I worked in distribution. And I worked in distribution, 2014. 7 years ago. And that's what we were doing. And when the film festivals came around, we were going hard to get all those meetings with, like, you know, the streaming services and stuff. And so, because we were a production company and we were a distributor, we were crazy, like it was a whole lot of what we were doing was a lot. But yeah, like, I kind of, for myself, I was like, is the information I have still accurate? So I feel like I got a little bit of validation from you. I'm like, oh, this is still very relevant. So yeah, I just want to thank you so much for, like, coming on my channel and speaking to my subscribers and my viewers. And I know they got a lot of value out of this.
Well, I sure hope so. And let me add one more thing. It's really about human behavior. Like, technology has made things so much easier in so many ways. And it certainly fast tracks a lot of different processes, right? But you can't just build relationships over email.
Right.
We are still human beings that need validation and need connectivity, like, so that's super important. So, like, don't go, oh, that's the way they used to do it. No, there's new ways of doing things, but the need for human relationships is going to last, well, hopefully for a lot longer.
There were so many great nuggets that Eric gave us, and distribution is no joke. It is not easy. Like all things in film, it is going to be a challenge, but it is possible to get your films out there. If you want to tap into the wisdom that is Eric, please check out his channel, Global Vid Academy, which is also a podcast. So wherever you get your podcast, you can check it out. I definitely recommend his channel. Definitely underrated. He's just started his channel. He's got a lot of great stuff there, all about streaming, the business behind streaming, distribution, film distribution, TV broadcasting, all that stuff he covers. And he brings on all these really, really great guests who are also experts in their field. So definitely check his channel out. If you are interested in film distribution, you want to learn more, I have a video on that, Film Distribution 101. It's one of my most popular, most successful videos. It's also one of my oldest ones, but all that information rings true, and all this interview did with Eric was validate that all those things are still happening even today, even with that video being 7 years old. So that video will be there for you. Learn about it, Film Distribution 101. Also, I will leave the channel, the video to his channel. Definitely gotta check out his channel, Global Vid Academy. Thank you so much for watching. That is it for now, and I shall see you next time.